Sufferers of acute stress disorder find themselves overreacting to negative stimuli after some traumatic event, just like we see happen with Shaggy after he gets himself trapped in that monster closet. And believe it or not, true to the movie, hypnosis has actually been shown to help reduce the effects of acute stress disorder. So it looks like Scooby Doo's story here is actually rooted in some real-life science. At least way more real-life science than I ever would have expected. But then, how does all this explain him turning into Son Goku? Well, the Ultra Instinct fight scene that started this whole thing happens while Shaggy's in one of those fearless states. In the movie, Mr. Hughley makes the point of saying that his PLR is more powerful than your standard versions of hypnosis.
This is completely different.
It's so powerful, in fact, that it even reprograms Hughley himself later on in the movie. So it seems likely that what Shaggy is undergoing here is a hypnotically induced Super Saiyan-like transformation, a concept that, for as absurd as it sounds, once again is unbelievably backed up by real-world science. The Soviets back in the 50s and 60s believed so strongly in the power of hypnosis that in the 1956 Olympics, they had 11 hypnotists come along with them. It seems ridiculous, right? Until you start looking at the numbers. The Soviets managed to outmedal the Americans that year, 98 medals to 74. Now, obviously, this isn't really a transformation, and it's more correlation than it is causation. Otherwise, you would see all countries bringing all sorts of hypnotists along with them to the games. No, the scientists who've studied hypnosis tend to conclude that it helps put athletes into a flow state, a mental state of being fully immersed in the activity that they're doing, clearing their mind and putting their everything into what they're doing at that very moment. The crazy thing about all of this is that it's almost identical to how Ultra Instinct is described. It's how Goku is able to unlock this new transformation in the first place. Ultra Instinct requires that the fighter literally stop thinking, stop overanalyzing, and just exist in the moment, which is why users of it are able to react instantaneously to attacks that are happening around them. It's also why Vegeta, with his highly analytical mind, struggles when he tries to master Ultra Instinct form. He's overthinking. He can't clear his mind enough to enter the necessary flow state. So does that make Shaggy the Scooby Doo god tier equivalent of Goku? Well, not quite. Power levels in the Dragon Ball series are usually determined by scouter devices, measuring the amount of ki energy that's possessed by a single character. Although this number should theoretically remain somewhat stable throughout your lifetime, intensive training, natural aging, and form changes, such as going Super Saiyan, can change your total power levels. Shaggy is still bound by his human limitations and lack of training, though his reaction time certainly is faster when he's in this quote-unquote Ultra Instinct mode. He still needs time to think about how he reacts to attacks, and he's missing out on all of those really nifty glow effects. So what exactly then is his power level? In addition to his fight against the biker gang, Shaggy's other shining moment comes at the end of the movie when he leaps across a river, jumping up a set of falling rocks to reach a hole in the roof. Shaggy is now jumping from a falling rock and gaining a huge amount of altitude from each jump. So not only is Shaggy having to create enough force to jump from rock to rock, but he's also having to do it before the rock he's on loses too much of its own altitude. User Brendala on LiveJournal actually shared a collection of old Scooby Doo comics with information about all of the characters, and Shaggy's height is given at 6 foot, or 1.822 meters. So using Shaggy as a ruler in this shot, we can estimate that Shaggy is crossing about 5.5 meters in the course of about 3 seconds, using 3 separate hops. Shaggy also has to at least maintain his altitude, and in fact we see him gaining in altitude with the subsequent 2 hops, bouncing over a meter off of each rock as he waits for the next rock to fall. Now consider how this needs to work for Shaggy. In a normal force diagram of jumping, the ground isn't moving, so it's exerting a force equal to your weight accelerated by gravity into the ground. When you want to jump, all you need to do is exert some extra force downward into the ground, and that propels you up off of it. But now imagine the ground is also accelerating downwards at the same speed, just like we see the falling rocks do in this scene. Sure, you can still jump off of them, but actually gaining any additional height is going to be significantly harder. Instead of getting the full, equal, and opposite effect of your downward push, you now have to account for the fact that the rock is falling as well. Instead of force equals mass times acceleration like it would normally be for any sort of jump, now it becomes force equals mass times acceleration to account for your jump, plus mass times gravity to account for the falling rock. We see Shaggy hit 4 rocks in total, and 3 that we see a good measure of. His collision time with each of them takes about 2 to 4 frames each, about 1 to 2/10 of a second. So if we factor all of this in, along with Shaggy's listed 160 pounds or 72.5 kilograms kilogram weight, we find that each single leap that Shaggy is making is going to take an astonishing 5,428 newtons, or 1,220 pounds of force. Now, in 2014, Zydrunas Zavickas set a world deadlift record of 1,155 pounds, and Shaggy has to beat that 3 times in the course of a couple seconds. That is superhuman levels of strength. Not quite the power of flight, but he's getting pretty darn close. And in the Dragon Ball universe, flight or high jumps are definitely something that we can use to help calculate overall power levels. Now, the Dragon Ball Encyclopedia Daizenshu 7 has an incredibly comprehensive look at various characters' power levels throughout the series, which will in turn allow us to give some rough comparisons to Ultra Instinct Shaggy. So let's look at Shaggy's power set. Shaggy has fast reaction times, above average strength, and the ability to almost fly, but not quite. His jumping ability is just really good and really fast. Where Shaggy hits his clearest limitation is not being able to create any sort of energy or ki-related blasts. Now, looking across the franchise's history, the original Dragon Ball series is the only time that we see this level of more grounded, realistic fighting, before power levels started to grow out of control. During the 23rd World Martial Art Tournament, we see Goku square off against his future wife Chi-Chi. During the course of their sparring, we see her demonstrate many of the same skills that Shaggy uses in the Phantasaur movie: fast reflexes and superhuman jumps, but no actual flying. So according to the encyclopedia, her power level at the time was 130. The next power level up that we see from there is 139, as showcased by Jackie Chun, aka Master Roshi in disguise, during the 21st World Martial Arts Tournament. Here, he demonstrates many similar skills as Chi-Chi: fast reflexes, stronger attacks than normal, except there is one key difference. Or should I say, key difference. Haha! You get it? Key difference? K-I? Anyway, in Jackie Chun's battles against both Yamcha and Goku, he shows his ability to harness ki-related attacks. The Yamcha battle in particular shows why Shaggy wouldn't be able to hold his own in a fight like this. As such, Ultra Instinct Shaggy's power level is best estimated as comparable to Chi-Chi's, level 130. Maybe just slightly more based on that series of extreme jumps, but we definitely know that it's gonna fall somewhere between 130 and 139. Man, I feel like a Your Movie Sucks review right now. Well, it's not a 130, but it's also definitely not a 139, so let's give it a 130 and a half. I might change that number later, but that's what we're gonna go with now. That being said, it's worth noting that all of this is without Shaggy doing any training. Up until this point, he's just been a hippie who lives out in a van running away from mysteries. Given a little practice with Master Roshi and the gang, Shaggy could absolutely ascend, reaching higher and higher power levels until finally he's able to stay just as useless as the other Z fighters on the sidelines as they watch Goku do all the work. Hey, at least he won't die as much as Krillin. So Shaggy's power level might be a bit disappointing. Definitely not enough to match Goku. But you know where the two are comparable? Appetite. On that one, Shaggy might truly have Goku beat. But hey, that's just a theory. A film theory. And cut.